So we're gonna have a divot. My original topic was gonna be this month's game releases. I'm gonna do that next week, just because I want to make this my topic. After going over the news stories and stuff, I thought this was pretty big, and I think it deserves its own topic because I think it's a pretty huge announcement, especially for the timing of it. So for those unaware, Phil Spencer over at the official Xbox Wire blog announced introducing Xbox Game Pass, unlimited access to more than 100 games. And basically what this is that at Xbox, we put gamers at the center of everything we do, this is Phil's words, and remain committed to giving you the freedom to play the games you want with friends you want, on the devices you want. This year is shaping up to be an exciting one for gamers as we prepare to launch Project Scorpio this holiday, bringing the most powerful console ever made to the Xbox One family of devices. We continue to make platform improvements to connect the growing community of players on Xbox Live and to add a robust and diverse portfolio of games. Today, we're continuing our commitment to give you more options to diversify and expand your library of games with Xbox Game Pass, a new gaming subscription service coming later this spring. Xbox Game Pass gives you unlimited access to over 100 Xbox One and backwards compatible 360 games, all for $9.99 a month. So that's the end of that article there. Before we jump into just talking back and forth about this announcement, a couple of little quick updates. Some people were wondering, do you have to have Xbox Live Gold to use this service as well, meaning you have to have two subscription services? No, you don't. You can just buy this by itself and not have Xbox Live Gold, although you will need Gold to play multiplayer. That's kind of evident, right? That's the whole point of Xbox Live in the first place, and PSN and stuff. So if you just want to, get this for $10 a month and play all the single player titles you want and never play any multiplayer, you're cool with that. Just $10 a month. Also, you're going to be downloading the games. This isn't streaming. It's a huge problem that people have a PlayStation now. You're going to be able to download the games directly. A lot of people were concerned. Another question that came up in the frequently asked questions section was how often titles were going to be coming and leaving to the service, kind of like Netflix, where every month there's a bevy of movies that leave and come, right? And the way Phil Spencer went about this was saying that yes, games will leave, but more than likely you'll see games added than them leaving. Like, there will be games that eventually leave, but it's not going to be like a very direct comparison of like 5 games leave and 5 games enter. He said more than likely the library will build up quicker than games are leaving the service.
Yeah, he was basically, to me, just kind of covering his ass and trying to be as transparent as possible. Basically saying like, yeah, I'm gonna try my best to make sure everything stays and I can get as much as possible on here and it stays. But I don't own the games, so I can't force them to stay. Basically, so there might be some that shuffle out. Very few, he implied.
The last thing, too, before we get into the actual discussion, is in an interview on Podcast Unlocked, they talked about what does this mean for EA Access. I've talked about EA Access before. It's $5 a month, I think $30 for a year. Excellent service. You get to play EA games early. You get access to their vault of games. They asked him straight up, like, what does this mean for your relationship with EA Access? And Phil Spencer was very candid about it. He said, we don't want people to think that their gaming experience is subscription-based, where you need to buy subscriptions to this and this and this to play all these different games. He said, if it was up to me, I would love to have EA be a part of this. Right now, they're not, and they have their own service, and they're doing very well with it. So it's basically, they want to work with EA on this. EA has their own EA Access, which they're probably making very good money on. But I guarantee you, and he said this too, if Game Pass does really well and it's skyrocketing in numbers, EA will probably want to be involved in that more than their EA Access service, because the Game Pass hits a larger target, right, of people. Not everyone is super excited for EA specific games, but if you lump in those EA games with everything else, it might be a bigger market for them. Then another great thing, sorry to cut you off there will be sales discounts. For people who are part of Game Pass, you will get discounts for games in the service. So that way, if you want to just buy the game outright and not have to subscribe to the service anymore, so that's huge as well. So
there is some differences though with EA Access, right? Like you get games early with EA Access, yes, and stuff like that.
You get access to new games early, but as far as the back end, where there's they call it the EA Vault, where you can play old games, 3 to 1 year old games. That's, I think, what he was talking about when it regards to working with EA to have their games on the service, not so much the early access part. Also, another huge thing is he was talking about this. Also, I said also twice. This doesn't affect games with gold by any means. You're still going to be getting your game releases. That has nothing to do with that. But they said that they want to use Game Pass as a way to introduce gamers to indie games as well. So there will be an opportunity for indie games to release on Game Pass. because they've talked to indie developers, and this might give them the best chance to have their game out there in the open to more people than just releasing it on its own and seeing how many copies it sells. If we introduce it to people who are already paying for a service, that can benefit, right? So
great example. I can't tell you how many movies I've watched on Netflix that are indie films that I never would have watched. I never would have even paid $2 to rent them before Netflix was around. But that gave them the opportunity there.
Yeah. And then you might go watch that next director's film in a theater.
Exactly.
The huge thing here, too, that Phil Spencer talked about is that this was one of the things he was working on for the last 2 to 3 years. Phil Spencer's been at Xbox for 3 years after the abysmal Xbox One announcement. And he basically stated this was one of the things on his checklist that he wanted to get done. Backwards compatibility, which was huge, as we saw. He wanted to launch new hardware, which we saw on Xbox One S and also Project Scorpio coming later this year. And he said this was a huge thing. He said that he always felt that this was a service that needed to be done right. And they asked him how this relates to PlayStation Now, like what he felt in relation, like did they learn from PlayStation's mistakes? And he said the big thing is that he enjoys the service, he's used the service, and it's great. But he feels that if you have the hardware to run a game, you should be able to run the game, meaning downloading it and not streaming it. So I think that was a huge thing for him. He said we wanted to give people the ability to download these games and not stream them because streaming is a very big issue, and that can cause a lot of problems. The biggest difference is that I think the downloading versus streaming with PlayStation Now, because people are going to compare these two services, obviously.
One other thing, too. I thought you wanted to say it.
Sorry. The price. Yeah, it's half the price of PlayStation Now.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know was $20. That's kind of crazy to me.
They raised it, I think, a year or two ago.
Yeah. $10 is the perfect. $9.99 is the perfect entry point because that's what people are already used to. That's the Netflix price.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think they're doing everything right about this. I think the one thing is with it being, the Xbox Game Pass, it is nice with PlayStation Now that you can just hop around to any game you want. And of course, if you're having to download each Game Pass game, then that's not really the case. But that's just kind of how it goes. And I don't think that's a huge deal, but it really does sound like they're learning from every mistake Sony made, price and the streaming and
this
just
is
the way they're going about everything.
Yeah, this is the frustrating thing, though. Don't you think that Sony has all these great first-party exclusives, and not just first-party, just exclusives in general. And Xbox has been nailing the service stuff, backwards compatibility. They're nailing all this. It's like, can you learn from this person? Can you learn from this person? Because if Xbox had a great stable of exclusives, Xbox would be great. PlayStation is obviously selling good. We don't need they don't have to worry about anything. But if they had all of this service stuff, they would make PlayStation even better, and it wouldn't even be an argument. It's just like neither of them have like the other.
I just thought, think about how great Sunset Overdrive would have sold on PS4.
Yeah, because the audience is already A, familiar with that developer, and B, there's a larger player base, and
But they're also more familiar with that type of game.
Yeah.
That sucks.
I really hope that Xbox comes out and proves people wrong, or maybe not even wrong, just justifies the purchase of an Xbox and comes out with great exclusive content and just a reason to own a Project Scorpio and stuff like that. They're nailing on the service end, like backwards compatibility, huge. People love that. The fact that you can change your gamer tag, you've been able to forever. Game Pass is huge too. Like I just think that this stuff is the easy stuff. I think the exclusives are hard because it's all about having developers commit to your platform, right? And especially if you're a losing console, it's tough. I think Xbox has the upper hand now because they will have the quote-unquote most powerful console. With Xbox One S and stuff, I think it's an even harder uphill climb because you're like, we want you to make an exclusive. And like, well, you have half the units that PlayStation does. How are we going to, recoup costs? And Microsoft's like, well, we either give them a bunch of money up front or we give them what it's worth and then they deny us. Like, I think they're fighting a battle there of getting exclusive, right? Non-first party exclusives. So I think now with like their services and all this stuff available for indie developers and Project Scorpio, I think that they can have a easier time of maybe having that conversation with second and third parties about getting exclusives. But I think this is huge. Phil Spencer just nailing something again, shocker. But I really wish that this is followed up by some great exclusives because then you're starting to see Microsoft in a great position moving forward, right? So this is something that I'm definitely going to look into too. So.
Yeah, that's definitely the piece they're missing is the exclusive. And when you look at everything objectively, that's really the only thing that they're at a a significant disadvantage at. Otherwise, they're doing everything like as good as they can, right? But this is interesting. It's another one of those that this isn't for me, just because I'm like trying to catch up with new games that come out, let alone very seldom do I get to go back and play old stuff. So, but this is a little different because at least there will be some current gen games on that service. But the part to me that isn't even there yet that I'm more excited about is it's my assumption, and the way Phil talked about it in that interview was that someday that there will be an option to stream, and that this will be available on different platforms.
Yep, Windows.
It would be great
Windows.
if you could do either or. That would be really
exactly,
awesome.
Which is actually what Netflix does now. You can actually download, I think, most shows on Netflix to a device, which never used to be there. So they could follow that model, and I think it'd be great because that way you get the best of both worlds. If you do have the Xbox One, you can download and play that way, or if you have just a smart TV, you can fire up the Xbox app and then just stream, and all you need is a controller. And that's the part of, because I always talk to you guys about how much potential I think PS Now has because of that. That's what excites me the most, is one day like we don't need consoles, just like we don't need Blu-ray players really anymore. And we're not there yet. I think like everyone, it's obvious that Sony went a little too early trying to push the streaming stuff when most of us can't.
Oh my
We
god,
don't have
I
the internet
can't.
for it, right?
They're canceling. By the way, this is a good tangent. They're canceling PS Now on everything except for PC and PS4.
Yeah, really odd.
So PS3 and PS Vita won't be able to do PS Now anymore.
Yeah.
And
PS TV.
that shit, yeah, and PS TV or Sony Bravia TVs, like, they've fucked that shit up with Gaikai so hard. There's basically hardly any reason for them to have spent almost $400 million on Gaikai a few years ago at this point. And they've just fucking destroyed the potential that they had with Gaikai and with PS Now. And it's just, God, they've just fucked it up.
So they have PS Now apps on Sony smart TVs and Samsung smart TVs, I believe. Why isn't there a PS Now app for Roku and Apple TV and all those? There's no reason that
they're
can
canceling the TV apps anyways. So
exactly, it's weird. That part doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, the interesting thing too. So like PlayStation obviously launched with streaming. Game Pass is launching with downloading. I do think, like you guys said, the dream world is having both of those options, right?
Right.
But I do think that launching with the downloading is the smarter decision to begin with because of the infrastructure we have currently. I would rather have it start with downloading and then have streaming included than streaming than downloading. I mean, it's a weird, arbitrary argument.
What the fuck was Sony thinking? In order for them to be able to have a viable business model with PlayStation Now and even to have a reason to buy Gaikai, our infrastructure would have needed to be several years ago where it's going to be in probably about 20 to 30 years. To where everyone has, fiber internet, basically. All across the country, all across the globe. Like, why the fuck did they just think in 2013 that they were going to have this service that was uber popular where you're streaming video games and there's no input lag? Like, the fuck?
Well, you could say, what were they thinking about that whole Xbox One announcement conference? It's just like these companies not understanding where the infrastructure
Don't even get me started on fucking Don Matrick. I don't even want to get started on that dummy.
Yeah. But I think this is a huge announcement. Like I said, the only thing that's missing from Xbox Now is the exclusives, and I really hope that they push through with this. We've talked about this before. PlayStation means a lot more to Sony than Xbox does to Microsoft. Not meaning that they don't want them to succeed, but like PlayStation is a hefty amount of revenue for Sony, and Xbox is a drop in the bucket for Microsoft. So I think a lot of the, having a lot of great exclusives and stuff like that. I'm not saying this is an excuse for Xbox. I still think they need those solid exclusives, but you can tell that PlayStation is in a position where they want to deliver because they realize how important they are to Sony, and so I'm excited to see the future of Xbox. Hopefully PlayStation Now gets fixed for PlayStation gamers because obviously it's going wrong right now.